Gays Against Groomers presents The Dark Side of the Rainbow. I'm your host, Robert Wallace. In honor of National Detrans Awareness Day, we've interviewed 4 detransitioners for today's episode. In the course of our over 2-hour Q&A discussion, we talked to them about how they were misled and deceived into the trans ideology, or how it was even chosen for them. The insights you will hear will help you understand the mindset of someone coming out of trans identification. And you're going to hear how what a person goes through during transition continues throughout their life. We dig into the deeper side of trans psychology, and we also discuss how the world, the trans community especially, receives these survivors who have gone to the end of the rainbow and back. These were hard conversations to have, but we're honored that they've decided to share their stories with Gays Against Groomers, The Dark Side of the Rainbow. So, let's get to the interviews. Well, welcome to the Dark Side of the Rainbow. This is a Gays Against Groomers production. Right now, we're in the midst of celebrating D-Trans Awareness Day, and we have 4 members actually from Gays Against Groomers joining us. We've got Nicholas, Javier, Emma, and Kevin. And they're going to give us some insight into their detransitioning journey and help us understand more of what it's like to go through that process. So, if I could just get everybody just to say a word of introduction before we get started, we'll start with Nicholas.
Hi, my name is Nicholas Blooms. I am a detransitioner. I am in the state of Illinois. I would say I'm a soul artist and graphic designer here to guide people through connecting with their hearts to connect with their deeper wisdom because I do that visually. I love art and it's my way of expressing who I am.
Thanks, Nicholas. And Javier.
I'm Javier. I'm from the state of California. Um, I mostly do with, social media awareness. I'm trying to get out there myself, trying to bring more attention to what gender ideology does to people who are vulnerable, both mentally and just whatever type of vulnerability they can exploit, basically. Um, my detransition was very hard for me personally.
Thank you for that, Javier. We'll deep dive into that. Emma.
Hi, I'm Emma. I'm in the state of Florida, and I have pretty much been an artist my whole life. I like talking about different things. I have my own YouTube stuff where I talk about my journey and hoping to help other people along the way. Um, I kind of do a lot of things for the community as well, and I am just here to tell people that you're not alone, and maybe seeing both sides of the tale here, they can make a better educated decision where I have never had that. And unfortunately, my situation's a lot different than most people's, but regardless, I'm still at the same end zone here. And so I'm trying to figure out, what's next. And I know it's confusing. I know it's been frustrating at times. It's been sad. It's been happy. But I realize that we're here and there are other people going through it. And that's why I love doing what I do.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And Kevin.
Yeah. Um, I was on estrogen for about 10 years and I did an undergrad, master's, and doctorate in Bayesian performance. And I realized the university system is really corrupt and it's just only out for money, so I couldn't sleep at night doing that. So I ended up doing something else and built a business, and then that went well, and that brought me to traveling quite a bit. And um, my whole reason for detransitioning came from experience I had in Peru from an ayahuasca retreat, and about a year to integrate that experience. Um, and now I hold a support group for both detransitioners and parents that either have kids that have transitioned and are estranged, or have detransitioned themselves, and they also join the group. And we really just go over how we can expand on through the lens of a kaleidoscope of like thoughts, feelings, and ideas, and just have a space to express, so they don't feel like they can't express it, because right now we're in a space and a culture and a society where all this is completely taboo. And we just need more spaces where we can be open and vulnerable and share.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that, Kevin. Okay, so I appreciate everybody's introduction there. I'm going to start off with the first question. We'll take about 2 minutes each to answer this, and then we'll go to the next one. So for the first question, this I'm going to direct towards Nicholas, and just going to ask you here, where do you feel that most of your direction and encouragement toward transitioning came from? Was it simply from inside? Was it from social media, parental uh, directioning?
It's a really good question. So what first came to mind was social media. I would say I'm the type of person, I grew up with a lot of internalized homophobia and not being able to connect with people easily. Putting up lots and lots of walls and feeling like people are going to reject me was my template of seeing the world. So whenever I connected with someone, it was out of fear and feeling like I can't connect with people. So the way I could connect with people easily was through online and going through Tumblr for hours on hours, watching YouTube videos. That was my gateway into gender ideology, because I was already feeling like there was something wrong with me. Being gay was not accepted within me, around me. So it was like, okay, I'm going to turn to the internet. Internet seemed like it was welcoming different ideologies, like, I mean, gender ideology and homosexuality. So it was like, okay, this seems like something that could interest me and make me feel like I could feel safe. So that took me down a rabbit hole into putting on this ideology that if I become non-binary or gender fluid, that means I'll be loved and accepted. And that's my answer to why there's something wrong with me. And that took me even deeper down a rabbit hole of, okay, what is transition? I went to a high school where there was at least 5 to 6 trans men and women. So I was like, I already had the mentality that gender isn't a binary. So seeing that in the physical world where other people were trans already allowed me to be like, okay, I guess this is normal. So let me research that through YouTube, watching people on YouTube talking about like 6 signs you're trans. These are the reasons why you should transition. I became super, super fixated on the ideology that if I change my body, if I change everything externally, then I'll feel better about myself, because internally I had this battle of like, there's something wrong with my Adam's apple. My voice is disgusting. My body hair is disgusting. My facial hair is disgusting. My brow bone is disgusting. That was driving me even deeper down this hole of I am trans. So that really, the fixation of wanting to fix myself was through social media. And that was I thought was my only answer.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. Javier.
Uh, I'd have to say it was a combination of my at the time friend group and social media. Uh, like Nicholas said, I kind of grew up with a bit of internalized homophobia. Um, growing up, I had heard a couple of people around me saying, being gay was wrong, sinful, everything under that whole spectrum of thinking. Um, I had met a transgender man on a gay hookup app one day, and we just started talking and everything. And quite frankly, he passed so much I didn't know he was trans until he told me after we had hung out for the first time. Then honestly, I've never even heard of the term transgender until I met him. Then I started looking into it, and then he's like, you're too feminine for what you were born as. Maybe you're transgender. So I started looking into it, and it just made sense to me because growing up, I was a more feminine kid. I loved cooking. I dressed up in my mom's dresses and high heels. I'm pretty sure a good majority of gay guys have done that when they were little. Um, then that just spiraled into, like Nicholas said, that rabbit hole of trying to fix something that was never broken to begin with, but just mainstream media made me think I was broken because I was too feminine for my biological gender. So I just started going deeper and deeper. I started shaving my body hair, my facial hair to be more feminine and everything.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. All right, let's go to Emma Dowd. Emma.
Well, that is a very, very good question. And honestly, it's something for me. It's going to sound really, 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 really weird, but I didn't have a choice. When I was born intersexed. I had both genitals. And so the doctors decided to choose for me. And they unfortunately chose wrong. I was born 46XX CAH, which means that I have a tumor inside of my body that produces a little bit more androgen. And so that's one of the reasons that I had a little remnant of both genitals. And so they did surgery on me very, very young, and I didn't even know it. And I was raised as a man, and I could never fit in. It made school extremely hard because I remember the first time in kindergarten, kids get like those little crushes on everybody. Well, I had a crush on Michael, and he was my friend. And I came home and I remember telling my mom, I'm going to marry Michael. I'm not going to say his last name, but I remember my neighbor heard that, and what he told my mom was like, "Oh my God, she is that he's gay. Can't let that happen." And my mom's face completely changed. And then's when I realized I completely hurt her. And I don't know why. But at this time, whatever I'm doing, I can't do that. My mom said, I don't care what you do inside the house, but outside the house, you're a boy. I remember the first time I went and got my hair cut, and it devastated me. And I'm still kind of scarred from that because I thought I looked like a little boy, and it made me look really stupid. And so what I ended up having to do is pretend, and you would look at other men and other boys, and I would be like, what are they doing that's cool? What are they doing that's making them them? So I adapted their ideology, not their ideology, but the way that they dress, the way that they think, the things that they do. And I took it to the extreme. So if you guys ever saw like She's the Man in that movie, when she's like, yeah, I'm totally like bro dude, so bro. And that's what we do, bro things. That's kind of how I was living. And I ended up having to tighten that up even more. And then in high school, I found out I was intersexed because I have a uterus and ovaries and everything else. And so at that point in time, I had not taken PE yet. I was starting to develop female characteristics. And so I was given an option to not do anything, but potentially become very beat up, potentially even killed. And at the other side of that, I could take testosterone and stop all of it. And that's what I decided to do. The doctor said it would be perfectly healthy. Nothing will happen. And when I get out of school, if I want to change or if I want to do something else, I can. Well, that's not exactly what happened because that testosterone completely shocked my body. The pituitary gland started to produce way more testosterone than it should, but never enough to make me a man, totally. So I started getting very sick and I got off of it right after high school. And I thought everything would go back to normal. I could fix it, and I couldn't. And so
Emma,
at this point in time, it destroyed my voice. It destroyed my body a little bit. I had hair that I didn't want. And so I'm like, well, this is as good as it's going to get, and continued on with that. And then
hey there,
I got,
Emma.
yeah,
Sorry to interrupt. We're gonna go back into that. If you guys will notice, I'm gonna do a little marker here when we get to our 2 minutes, just so we can get through everybody. But I want to go back into those details with you, Emma.
okay,
Can you see my screen? Okay.
I can, yes.
Okay. Okay. All right. So let's move into the second question. Again, I didn't want to interrupt you, Emma, because we're already gonna be talking about that, and I want that full on here in a minute. Nicholas, what were your reasons for detransitioning?
What was my reasons for detransitioning? I would say the mental health aspect was a huge deal. I, as I medically transitioned for 3 years, it was intensifying my anxiety and depression to the point where I wanted to off myself a lot. The social anxiety was intense to the point where I didn't want to go outside and chat with people. And on top of that, there were lots of feelings of doubt. I went through getting the hormone medication without even consulting with a therapist. I got it through Planned Parenthood, who just gave it to me for. I met with the therapist there for 30 minutes, and they just gave me estradiol and spironolactone so that I could transition. I didn't have any extensive. They didn't look into my background of my traumas, my internalized homophobia. So when I was starting to develop a spiritual practice to connect with my heart, my soul, the more I did that and self-reflected, I realized, okay, like I didn't actually self-reflect to choose to transition. Why did I transition? And the more I dug into self-reflecting, reasons why I had the belief system that I had, reasons why I believed there was something wrong with me. What were the feelings there? What were the underlying feelings that caused me to believe those thoughts? It was a lot of examining who I was to the point where transition didn't make sense anymore. I remember recalling and thinking to myself, if my body is fully equipped to be able to be healthy without taking these two pills, why am I taking them? Like, if I can fix my brain and change the way I think and see and perceive the world, can I just do that internally without doing that externally?
Wow, thank you for that. Um, Javier, what were your reasons for detransitioning?
Oh, my reasons were mainly due to mentality and just my mental health in general. At one point in the same month, I've tried to off myself twice. Um, First, I tried to OD myself, and then the second time, I just lost it and just started walking towards the bridge. But something told me to call, the suicide hotline, and that person was able to talk me out of it. It was just my whole transition was just full of negative effects, nothing positive whatsoever. And it was just so bad that my depression and anxiety basically had me bedridden until I tried to not be alive twice in the same month. And the night that I, excuse me, the night the person on the hotline convinced me not to do it, my friend finally found me, uh, and just out of reaction slapped me across the face and then hugged me and started crying, saying that he couldn't lose me. And I just broke down, cried, vomited up whatever pills I had took. And that's when I knew that I needed to stop taking these horrible, horrible medications that were just causing me to act out like this in a way that I never acted before. And it was just a horrible experience of my life that I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy or wouldn't want anyone else to go through.
Wow. It's clear that there's a lot of deep, deep depression that a lot of people go through, not just in your school years, but when you're going through this kind of issue, it seems like it's a very particular kind of hurt and struggle. And so I'm grateful for you guys sharing that with us. Emma, can you tell us about your reasons initially for detransitioning?
Mostly health. That was one of the things that I needed to do. And like I said, my situation was a little bit different, so I would need to have gone to get testosterone to stay the way that I was. But health was a big problem, and my health is still a big problem. And I think the other thing is mentally, trying to be something I wasn't was draining me. I looked sickly. I was mentally destroyed. I did try to commit suicide a couple of times, about twice. One time I almost succeeded, and I'm really glad that I didn't. And just wanting to live my life the way that I should have, as opposed to trying to pretend my way through it. I think that was one of the biggest reasons that I did uh, decide to not pursue it and just see how nature would end up.
Wow, thank you. And Kevin, tell us about what spurred you on to your detransition.
I think put it shortly is a suppressed masculine spirit that ended up getting really pissed off. Um, when you deny who you really are, it gets harder and harder to fake what you're trying to fake. Um, um, I mean, within the first month of starting estrogen, I had um, started a 9-year path of manic depression and suicidal attempts. I was hospitalized twice. Um, um, there's, yeah, I mean, it's a lot of impressive deep darkness that stems from it when you're just trying to play God with your own body, essentially. So, um, I was lucky enough for the ayahuasca retreat that I went to. The first month before you go down, you're supposed to get rid of anything that stimulates your nervous system. So anything that numbs you or it helps you disassociate. So like, bad food, sex, drugs, alcohol, your any time of screen time, um, any music, anything that stimulates it. You want it to be in a very calm state for like a whole month prior. And um, and by doing that, that's what allowed me to realize and to communicate with myself on a very honest level, because I wasn't disassociating by you know addictive things that our Western culture more or less forces down our throats. um and Yeah, and I mean, if there's a cherry on the top, it would be the countless times my doctors just absolutely screwed up my estrogen dose, and they had my levels like 3 times higher than like a pregnant woman. So like I would just, feel like I'm going insane. So it's nice to just be on T again and um, feel like I actually have my feet on the ground.
Wow, thanks for sharing that. Yeah, where ayahuasca and the plant medicine family helps a lot of people in a lot of different ways. So it's very interesting thing to talk about right there. All right, we're going to circle back around to Nicholas. And the next question is, where for you has the greatest source of mental health challenges come from during your detransition? So I'm talking about confusion, identity crisis, depression, anxiety. And do you feel like mental health support's widely available as the need is, as broadly as the need there is for it?
So is your question saying like where did the need to transition originate?
Well, I guess specifically, and you can feel free to answer this any way you want, including if that's something that comes to mind you want to talk about. But where has the greatest source of mental challenges during the detransition come from? Was it from your medicine? Was it from buried emotions? However you want it.
Yeah, I would say a lot of it was emotional. I was the type of person that would suppress and suppress emotions, and I was dissociated to the point where I was floating over my body a lot of the times, like I wasn't present. So I think that was a huge part of unpacking the emotions. Like there was lots of shame, there was lots of anger, there was lots of sadness, like really, really deep sadness. I remember like journaling and really had to connect with my inner child that felt suppressed of his femininity for so long, thinking that transition was the correct answer, but not. Like really reflecting back from childhood where I think from the age of 7, I was like pressing on my Adam's apple every single day, not hoping to not have that come out and really journaling that out. I remember as a little kid, as soon as I saw pubic hair, like that was such a shameful moment of like, oh my God, becoming a man. My body is rejecting me. My body is betraying me. Having those deep, dark feelings finally be addressed. Parts of why it was difficult to detransition was the fear of being judged. I was afraid that if I admitted to my mistakes, people would hate me, people would reject me. I thought people would stop being friends with me just because, like admitting that you did something wrong and made a mistake is hard, especially with claiming a new identity, saying, oh, I go by this name now, and then now you're retracting to going back to your birth name. It's just like, it's so confusing for your family members and friends. So it's just like, it was very scary to confront that and tell people that.
Wow. And just as a quick follow-up to that, how would you advise other people who are going through the same thing or maybe too afraid to say, all right, everybody, I know had you all on the ropes about this thing, but I'm about to reverse course.
I would say, this is your life. Like, just start saying to yourself, I choose me. Because for a long time, like when you let mental illness control your life, that's not choosing yourself. That's choosing some darker aspect of you that isn't love and integrated to control your life. But when you say, I choose myself, by choosing to go off the medication, by choosing a path to self discovery and self acceptance, that is a way healthier path than going on medications and still suppressing yourself so that your true soul doesn't get to express this life in this life, basically.
Okay. Very good advice. All right, Javier, can you tell us where you think you found the most damaging or troublesome mental distractions or struggles during your detransition?
Like with the last question, it was just mainly my depression was just awful. Um, it was just something so unbelievably hard to admit to myself that I made the worst mistake of my life. That I felt like people would think that I was just attention seeking, that I was just looking for attention. Excuse me. That people would try to tell me that, oh, I'm just trying to play a victim. That way I can, just act a certain way towards people if, like, oh, you're only saying this to me because I'm trans, stuff like that. That way I can play a victim on a constant basis. Mentally and then just emotionally, I was just constantly suppressing how I was feeling. I think about once I hit a year on estrogen, I realized I was making a mistake, but I just kept pushing down. It's like, oh, it's just nerves, I kind of described it as pre-wedding jitters. It was just something that was just impossible to do alone, but I was forced to do it alone until I finally detransitioned, where I was finally able to get recommendation to see a therapist over Zoom. It took three doctors to do it because three doctors didn't want to come anywhere near me because I was starting to detransition, and it was just awful.
All right. I appreciate that. And I also appreciate you guys struggling with my terribly worded question here. Um, I think part of what I'm trying to get out of this particular question is to show people from the other side a part of the struggle that you go through when you go through detransitioning that doesn't really get talked about. Sometimes we talk about the depression leading up to wanting to detransition or the depression during being transitioned, and even the depression after being completely detransitioned. But there's that whole intermediate lull where you're getting off of the stuff they put you on, or you're changing your relationships, like you were just talking about, Javier, with how people see you and stuff. So, all right, Emma, you're back in the saddle.
All right. For me, I was scared about what my family would say because they didn't know that I knew. So I thought that I might lose a lot of family and friends, and a lot of them probably would have thought that I was lying. So at the same time, or that I lied to them. So at the same time, I was afraid of the fallout, and that sent me into quite a bit of depression. The second part to that was I was married, and I was married to a female, and I really thought that when I was going to tell them the truth, that they would leave me. And honestly, I wouldn't have blamed them. And so that was making it really, 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 really hard for me to accept who I was. And I started looking at myself as this monster that created all these lies and hurt people, including myself. The other thing that I kind of got a little bit of a depression from too was I got body dysmorphia, which was a little bit different because I never had gender dysphoria, but I now have something that I got to deal with, and I'm dealing with it every day because I look at myself and I see the stuff that I did to myself and how ugly I am. And I think that I think I'm ugly. I think that I am a disgusting human being. And I constantly look at myself in the mirror. Um, I'm constantly judging myself. And anybody that's talked to me in the last few years have realized I am brutal on myself. And that's going to cause another form of depression if I continue doing that. So I have been seeking out therapy. I went to a therapist that really has understanding of all this type of stuff, and it's not somebody that just wants a paycheck to tell me what I want to hear. This person actually tells me what I need to hear, and I think that is so vitally important. I do believe that this stuff is out there for people if we look. Sometimes we just go to the easiest route and the easiest solutions, and we want to find somebody that's going to affirm whatever we're saying. And I think that's the most dangerous therapist out there. I don't even think they should be practicing in that particular point if that's what they're going to do. So I have a wonderful therapist. He's gotten me through a lot of this stuff. I surrounded myself with a lot of friends that have helped too, to help me feel better about myself. I don't know if I'm ever going to get to that point though. And I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to get over what I did to myself, but I'm taking it step by step every day. Depression is very strong. And I just hope that I come out okay. And if I don't, and this is as good as it's going to get, I'm going to be happy with that.
Thank you, Emma. And So for those of you who can't see, because you'll see on the radio, Emma is a beautiful person. And for that matter, Nicholas is a beautiful person. Javier is a beautiful person. Kevin is a beautiful person, inside and out, all of them. So I'm very sorry that you are struggling with that component of this issue. The next question, Nicholas, did you have any
Wait, we didn't do
medical
Kevin. We didn't do Kevin.
Oh, no, Kevin's off the show. We
Oh,
changed the plan. That was fun.
okay.
Sorry, Kevin. Okay, Kevin, I'm sorry I skipped you. Are you ready for this one? I'm going to go back to it.
Sure.
The biggest problems you had while going through the D-Trans process.
Yeah. I um I was doing a master's degree in British Columbia and um, smoking weed with a bunch of friends. A guy came in and not usual to the group. Um, I took a hit of what he had. Turned out to be crack. I did crack for about 2 months. And during that 2 months is when I made the decision to go to my doctor and to have bottom surgery. And a month before graduation, I quit that, went cold turkey, finished my master's, did everything I needed to. Surgery was like a week after graduation. Flew up for that. And I never really even processed that that decision was made when I was blasted off until recently. And that was surgery was in 2016. So um, definitely one of the hardest parts has been processing that alone for me because I was accidentally dosed and then just I didn't have any screening for surgery. They just gave it to me, and it's just yeah, it's yeah, that's that it's it's awful. It's super 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 shitty. Um, you know, but I'm definitely lucky that I have the amount of self love that I have and the amount of community and everything else I have. But yeah, processing something like that to that dynamic is it's no joke. Um, and so it makes sense why it's taken me even after coming back from Peru, where my path was obviously set. It still took me 8 months to integrate that experience to get me to the point where I'm at, which is 8 months off, 8 months on testosterone now. So yeah, it's not been easy.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
Kevin, how have you been processing that experience?
There's a lot of things that I believe have happened. Um, I mean, there's a lot of different possibilities that you can frame it. Human beings are made of their consciousness is made of the stories that we tell ourselves, right? We have the power to tell whatever story we want to tell ourselves. You know, um, I'm very much convicted to truth and honesty, and at the end of the day, I'm really grateful for the psychedelic experiences I've had to see what we're really made of, and um, and I believe we're just made of balls of light that's made of love. I mean, and to know that that's inside me and to have access to that at any given point in time, um, that's that's what pushes me to do the support group and not be able to sleep at night if I'm not helping the community.
Thank you for that, Kevin. And for our other speakers, let me just open this up by saying feel free to interject if, like just now, if you have a question of somebody, because one thing that I know is y'all are going to have very specific and more informed questions probably for each other than I would even be able to ask. So please feel free to follow up with anything you're thinking. All right, Nicholas, I truly am back to you this time. I apologize about that, Kevin. Now we are at the question, did you have any medical complications?
I don't think so. I'm grateful for that. The only thing that I really did was go on hormone replacement therapy for almost 4 years. I feel like what was horrible was the fact that I met with the endocrinologist in Milwaukee, and he didn't even need a waiver that came from a therapist saying that I have gender dysphoria. I just told him I'm trans, and he's like, here you go. Let's start giving you your hormones. Let's meet every 6 months and see where your levels are at. But I think he was kind of informed of how much estrogen and testosterone needed to be in a, biological female body, which I don't know how you would be able to compare that with the biological male body. So there wasn't any complications that was detrimental other than mental health. I think the only thing that really affected from the medication was my mental health and making me feel like I was insane every single day. But I would say as I took the estrogen and spironolactone, I did get a lot of fat tissue around my chest area. So it's been like almost 2 years of trying to work out to the point where I can get that not be like, you know, the fat, redistributing the fat so that it doesn't look like, some sort of a breast. That's it.
Thank you. I've noticed a couple people have brought up the question or the matter of how little investigation or therapy scrutinizing you'd gone through prior to being put into this process. So I want to take note of that. And if anybody cares to elaborate on that as we go, I think it's important for people to know who think you get a lot of, research and you're carefully put through and just how easy it is to get through nowadays. Javier, did you have any issues through your process? Was it pretty smooth sailing for you?
No, actually, it wasn't. So I already have a pre-existing medical condition, asthma. Um, it differentiates depending on the weather. Like if it's just really cold one day and then next day it just shifts to like 100 degree heat, my asthma starts to act up. The nurse that I consulted with through a online hormone distributor um was apparently giving me 5 times the normal hormonal dosage of a non-pregnant person. I mean, pregnant woman. Um, when I found that out, I happened when I got home from the doctors, I almost destroyed my room because of how pissed off I was. At one, a neighbor did call the cops because they thought I was beating someone, and I was home by myself. Uh, but now I've noticed, and my doctor has noticed that my lung capacity is a lot shorter. Uh, it, it's a lot worse. That even were I to have an asthma attack, I'd probably be hospitalized. Like that's how bad my lung capacity is. That now I somewhat have to live in fear of just having a medical episode that I'd have to be hospitalized. And I'll be honest, I do forget to bring my inhaler because it's just, there's been times where a good month or two straight, the weather's fine and I'm fine. Then out of nowhere, asthma attack. I That's just the main thing. It's just my lung capacity is now shorter, and now I do have to live in a bit of fear of being hospitalized because of it.
Wow. It's a very scary situation. Emma, what do you need me? Do you remember the question? Basically,
I
how's your
Yeah, I
transition
do. I
going?
remember it.
Okay.
For me, there has always been some type of health issue. Uh, when I started to take the testosterone in high school, I developed an early form of MS, which I would have gotten anyway at this point in time in my life, probably around now when I'm in my 40s, as opposed to doing it when I was 19. So I've been struggling. It made it very hard for me to get a job. But when the biggest problem that I have, and I didn't know this until I literally stopped taking testosterone and my testosterone stopped making itself for it by itself, is that for a short amount of time, my estrogen was just a little bit higher than the testosterone was. And then I started kind of really going insane. I was having manic depression. I was angry. I was happy. I mean, if you want to talk about what bipolar would be, that's pretty much what happened. And so one of my friends said, you really need to talk to a therapist about this. And so I did. And the therapist recognized right away, he goes, I think this is something um, far more dangerous than what we think it might be. You need to go get yourself tested for hormones. And what I've realized is that my hormone levels were almost zeroing each other out. So I had almost no hormones for approximately about 7, 8 months. And I was getting very, very sick. My body was just beat up. But at the same time, I felt healthy, and that's what kind of really got to me. And now that I've been to the doctor, they pretty much said, okay, do you want to be a boy or you want to be a girl? Because at this point in time, for probably the rest of your life, you're no longer producing hormones to be either one or the other. And if you stop, they're going to zero out. So unfortunately for me, I will have to be on either testosterone or estrogen the rest of my life. And that's something I really, really am struggling with, mentally dealing with, because at one point in time I would have been fine. My estrogens would have been completely normal had I just not done anything. And now it's going to cost me at least $60, $70 a month for the rest of my life. And it is frustrating. And on top of that, the complications that I've had from all of this stuff have impacted my MS. In fact, when I was they put me on too much progesterone to try to take care of the uterus that I have. They treated me as a female to male to female detransitioner, and they didn't look at my health condition. And what that caused me to do is put on a lot of hormonal weight. And when you're sitting down and and you're a little bit more overweight, it puts a lot of pressure on your diaphragm. And my diaphragm was one of the hardest hit by my MS. So I can really, really have a hard time breathing, even though I'm not like short of breath. My oxygen levels are high. I can't expand my chest correctly. So unfortunately, to try to resolve that, I had to go through a liposuction to try to remove some of that fat off of the area so I could just function and breathe correctly.
Wow. Well, anybody who tells you the stuff is reversible or that it won't affect you later on, what's what does the group think here? Not true? I mean, I guess you got to check every one of these things, but because there's so many different elements and they all have their side effects. That's true, Nicholas saying. All right, Kevin, can you tell us about your transition process, complications, unexpected things?
Yeah, I mean, the suicidal ideation and attempts was a big one. And looking back, it's wild on how I just took that in stride. I mean, it got so bad even during my master's, where it was middle of the week, and I planned to do it, and grabbed a rope and tied it to a tree, tied a noose, and jumped. And if it wasn't raining, I you know it wouldn't have slipped, and I wouldn't be here anymore. And so, I mean, it's just crazy. um, as far as surgeries, um, my surgeon recommended that we had ice, which is, good. But I fell asleep with the ice pack on, and so I gave myself frostbite, and then that had the effect of my sutures opening up, and I'm all healed now, and surprisingly, surprisingly, it doesn't look like anything happened, which is wild because it, you know, just just insane. Um, yeah, I mean, I was like walking one day, and I literally just all of a sudden had a pool of blood just run down my leg. Um, it was awful. um, and then when I had my implants taken out, um, the I don't it's they still don't really understand what happened. But anywhere, like my entire chest was just like covered in like intense hives. And like it just kept growing, like it kept spreading, like it didn't matter, like even though like it was like on the top of my shoulders, and like he didn't even do anything up there, like no chemicals or anything, so it's just really interesting. um and then yeah, similar to what you had going on, Javier, with the with the estrogen. I learned mine was also high for 8 months, and that was my last straw too. And I, yeah, rage and grief, just big rage and grief and learning. I mean, you just feel violated, like because they just destroyed your levels. It's insane. Um, yeah, that's all I got.
Wow. Whew. It's like screaming in the night and no one can hear you. It just sounds like a whole lot of personal trauma. And if people had an understanding of what you were going through, oh my gosh. It's a lot of it's very painful hearing you guys having to have gone through all this so long. Um, all right. So we're gonna go back to Nicholas. This question is regarding how you feel with regards to the society at large and the LGBTQIA. How do you feel with regards to any sort of stigmatization, discrimination that you get from these general communities?
It's funny because I was talking to my sister about this. She's in the Navy and she's in like she's on the one of the battleships, and she just calls me today being like, "How are you doing?" And I was telling her about the people from high school, people from college, about I like commenting on my social media because I like talking about detransition. Like it excites me. It's fun to talk about this stuff and because I'm passionate about it. So obviously I'm gonna trigger some people. I like doing that. It's kind of fun to see how people react because it's a lot of people react from a place of trauma. So it's obvious when I see people commenting that seemingly are all about loving inclusion, wanting to accept people, they're just commenting really mean stuff, horrible stuff. And it's almost like if you're wanting to support gay people, why are you attacking me? That's kind of homophobic, isn't it? But not that it's like them being homophobic because I'm gay, but it's just still like it's still not nice to be treating people that way. So I've had nasty experiences online from that, but at the same time, there have been such beautiful experiences. I've met so many awesome people through connecting online, like being part of Gays Against Groomers. I've connected with such awesome people. I've met good friends where we can just talk about conspiracy theories that's happening in the world. We can talk about how, um, stuff like that that just no, you can't really talk about with people that are like so lived out that they can't even hear you and they want to demonize you immediately. So I've had awesome experiences like that and being able to create art and then sharing that with the world through like talking about internalized homophobia through my art, people being able to relate to that has been such an awesome experience.
Wow. Yeah, we definitely can connect with a lot of like-minded people in this organization, and everybody's looking for a very specific kind of friend, somebody who really understands them. So you want to get around a community of like-minded people, and you'll find your new best friend, maybe. All right, Javier. Um, have you felt any stigmatization or discrimination against you from the society or from the LGBTQIA?
I have, like I said earlier, um, I had to go to, it took me about three doctors to finally have someone write me a referral to speak to a therapist because the first three wanted absolutely nothing to do with me. The moment I told them that I'm detransitioning, they told me to get out. It was uh, a lot of people have told me that um that I could have potentially have like a whole lawsuit against those three doctors for discriminating against me because I'm detransitioning. But that's just something personally I wouldn't pursue because it's just too much stress that my body just at the moment cannot handle. Excuse me. Um, the transgender friend that I had mentioned earlier, the moment I said I was no longer going to go by my preferred name, that I realized I made a mistake. He stopped talking to me for about 3 months, and then we started talking again. And every time we did, he would just like bring up instances of certain bills that were passed in states um like Ron DeSantis's famous "Don't Say Gay" bill, where it doesn't allow pornographic material in any type of school. He was upset about it, and that was the moment I realized like that was just someone I cannot in good conscience associate with. And I actually heard about Gays Against Groomers through Pink News. Well, someone who I can't remember if they were affiliated with them at the time or they used to affiliate, bashing them. And now I'm glad that I'm a part of Gays Against Groomers because I've met so many people who've gone through my situation, and it's sad to say that I hear people who go through the detransition, but just actually hearing three other people tell the stories, it truly breaks my heart. It truly does.
Wow. Yeah, that's intense. We're getting short on time, so I'm just going to move along here. Emma.
Okay. Yeah. Believe it or not, when I first in 2020, when I first started to realize I'm just going to let it play out and I'm going to be who I was supposed to be in the since my birth, one of the first places I turned to was actually the LGBTQ here in St. Petersburg. And believe it or not, when I told them my story, they wanted nothing to do with me. And I was really quite shocked by that. And so I'm like, okay, the only thing I could try to do now is find people that I could talk to that would help me get through it. And believe it or not, one of my absolute best friends and somebody I almost considered a sister was working against me and actually making it sound like they were trying to help me, and they actually were hurting me behind the scenes. But because of the fact I couldn't see them in person to feel that type of energy, I didn't know. Um, since I have come out and said basically what I was, what happened to me, and on my YouTube videos, I have received some of the most horrible things I've ever had. People wishing absolute harm on me. I just got a text the other day on Facebook, and it would make most people cringe. And ironically, this all comes from the LGBTQ community. And that's what I don't understand, because it's like a lot of them, and I see it every day. You pick up TikTok, you pick up YouTube, you see them pushing this transition, you pushing trans, pushing this, pushing that. But when you go against what they say, they just let you go. So half of these people that I've talked to were influenced by them. And then when they realize they made a mistake, they get exiled completely and are just thrown out. And to me, that's no different than somebody coming out that they're gay to their parents and their parents throw them out to the curb, because a lot of them lost their parents and they lost the group that held them now. And now I can see why there's more problems. But yeah, I truly believe that I didn't get the support I needed, and I still never did.
Wow. Yep. Abandoned by the community. That is promoting this. As soon as you realize, hey, maybe I wasn't the right candidate for this. Obviously, Emma, much different situation for you. But yeah, we've been hearing this sort of lack of support from the LGBT for so long. Kevin, can you discuss your feelings of stigmatization, discrimination from society or from the LGBTQIA mafia?
Um, I've never really cared about Facebook, but when I detransitioned, I thought it would be a really fun social experiment. Um, and I I think I had like, I don't know. Well, yeah, there was about like 600 or 700 people that basically either blocked me or unfriended me after saying I detransitioned and I don't support children taking hormones or having body parts removed. Of course, called a Nazi multiple times, and yeah, it's I hate to basically repeat in a different message what everyone else is saying, but I mean it's real. It's pretty wild. Um, I was having lunch with a friend that helped me through my addiction days, and I was telling her a little bit about this, and she just happened to pick me up, and she's like, I have to leave, and she just left me at the restaurant, right? So it's like it's and there wasn't even like room for like conversation or anything. This is a person that was like a friend of mine for like 8 years. It's just it's wild. But I think the biggest thing to really reflect on this is when people are in something that they feel this intense about. I think it's really important to not attack them personally. I think it's really important to understand, like, well, where are they coming from on that? Well, there's a lot of fear and like unresolved feelings in there. And I think the biggest thing that we need to go at is come at this with a side of compassion instead of, they're a mafia or they're awful or anything like that. These are honest people that are trying to do their best thing and live honestly, and they have been misled. We've all been misled. And what it really comes down to is how we can not create a greater divide, but um, come together more.
I love that. Thank you so much, Kevin. Well, guys, we're at the end of our first hour. If you're listening to this through a radio broadcast and you're thinking, what, there's more show? Yeah, there's more. And you're going to be able to pick up the second half wherever amazing podcasts are being had, Spotify, Apple iTunes, Podbean, wherever, and then just go right into the second hour. And so with that, I'm going to say goodbye here, and we'll talk to you next week, or we'll catch you online here in just a minute. All right. So for everybody here who's watching this, that means you are on the video version or you're listening through the podcast format. So we are in the second hour with Nicholas Blooms, Javier Perez, Kevin Jones, and Emma Dowd. And I am Robert Wallace, host of Dark Side of the Rainbow with Gays Against Groomers. And these are all also Gays Against Groomers members, detransitioners who are here telling their stories, answering some questions, and maybe we'll at some point stir this up and have a full-fledged conversation. Uh, but so far, we've just been doing a question answer format. So um, let's get to the first question of the second hour here. So for Nicholas, if you were talking to a trans youth, what would you suggest to them about how they should move forward?
I guess that's not a question I've ever thought about because, man, kids are different than someone that's 18 plus. If the kid's been through, gender ideology and been pushed this narrative that because they're playing with dolls or they like the color pink that they're trans, I feel like it will be difficult to navigate, especially if the parent's been pushing this trans narrative. I feel like the best thing I could share with them is get curious, start understanding, like just start getting curious to why you're transitioning. Because I don't want to press on the belief that there's something wrong with them. Like if if your parent thinks trans is the best for you, I'm sorry, that's your parent. It sucks. Like they shouldn't be doing that. But I think it'd be hard to tell a kid like stop transitioning, like this isn't right for you, because it'll freak them out. It'll also create more tension between me and the trans kid. So it'd be hard to have a conversation like that. I think the only thing is guiding them in a direction where they can better understand themselves, better understand why they're choosing to transition, and almost even giving them an alternative message, sharing my experience, telling my story, being like, I went through something you were experiencing. I thought I was trans, but I wasn't. I had this, this, and this experience that made me think I was trans, but I'm not now. And I'm better and healthier and happier for not transitioning anymore.
I think that's such a great answer because it's so true. You can't create other people's realities. And the more you tell them they shouldn't do something, the more they want to do it. But what you can do is you can characterize your own experiences in a way that helps them understand, hey, maybe there's another way to look at some of these things that I have in common with this person.
Yeah, and I feel like I want to invite parents that are transing their kids to listen to a detransitioner, listen to our stories because we have something that's not being talked about in the mainstream. Like that, I feel like this is such a common thing where there's no alternative narrative that's saying like you can heal gender dysphoria. You don't have to transition. You don't have to go through the medical transition. Like there's no narrative saying otherwise. It's like you either do this or you go off, your kid's gonna off yourself. Like it's just not fair. So I would say like invite a detransitioner to your community to speak.
Awesome. Very good advice. All right, Javier, if you were talking to a trans youth, maybe one who felt lost or thought they knew exactly what they wanted for themselves, based on your experience, how might you address them?
I've thought about that question so many times and thought of an answer. I've thought of God knows how many answers. And honestly, I can, to me personally, I can say that there's just no one particular way to go about it. Um, if I would try to talk to this child, I would want them to tell me like what makes them think they're trans, where they heard the term, like who talks to them about it, like stuff like that. Like like Nicholas said, there are just so many parents that are just pushing this ideology on the kids because at one point in their parents' lives, they were denied um support. They were denied love, comfort, everything that a child should have growing up with parents. But to push an ideology one that causes irreversible harm to some, quite frankly, I consider it child abuse. I personally consider it that. But I would want to sit down with this child and have them tell me like why they think the way they do, and that I would try to push them to go towards talking to a therapist who wouldn't be biased about it, who say, "Oh no, you're trans. Here's a referral. Go get pumped full of hormones and everything." I want them to talk to a therapist who will go through everything step by step and give them actual facts and data of what will happen if they take hormones and what's reversible and what isn't and what could possibly happen to their bodies. And like Nicholas said, I think it is important that these people who do push this ideology have that detrans people should be heard, because so many people are saying that us we don't exist, that we're we, point blank, we just don't exist. And I think it's just cruel on many levels to say that.
All right. Thank you for that. That's what today's all about. Listen to the detransitioners. You all have your unique perspective and philosophy on these matters, and that's what needs to come out right here on the dark side of the rainbow. Emma, what kind of advice would you offer a young trans identifying person to help them through their struggle?
I actually had this happen. My best friend called me up one night and said, "Hey, my daughter just came home. She told me she's trans. She's a boy." And she was pretty much influenced by her guidance counselor, because she used to use her guidance counselor as somebody that would help her through her days. And she said, "Would you mind talking to her?" And so when I talked to her, of course, I know her, and she likes to skateboard. She likes to do all the fun stuff like the guys do and stuff like that, because she really is a tomboy. And I asked her, I said, "So do you like men or do you like women?" She goes, "I like men." I said, "Could you see yourself dressed as a man the rest of your life and looking like one?" She goes, "No, I really can't." And I said, I kind of asked about their background. And the biggest thing popped up. And that was, she didn't feel worthy in front of her father because he had a stepson that he gave more attention to. I'm like, okay, now I know where it's coming from. She wants to please her father, and she thinks if she's a boy, she will get that love of her father. And so when I talked to her mom about that, we sat down, and she ended up not going through it, even though when the guidance counselor sent her home with the ticket to go to an endocrinologist and get the testosterone, they were pretty much had her convinced that this is what she's doing. She ripped it up, and today she is a thriving high school student. She is going to be a senior in high school. She's got a boyfriend that she loves to death. She's got a job, and she's happy. And I think that in the background of it, there's something there. And I seem to, when I see a lot of other people that are kids talking about this, there's one common ground. Socially weird as I was, sometimes problems at home. Sometimes they just don't know how to adapt themselves to life, and they like men's stuff, so they think that they're a boy. And I see a lot of other people trying to push an ideology. And so therefore they're like, okay, you're probably this, so let's get you here. I think there's underlying things, and that's what I think we need to look at as opposed to just the physical. And when we do that, I think we can really help a lot of kids.
Absolutely. It's funny, and not really a funny manner, but it's interesting that is the most commonly overlooked thing in all of these transition stories that I've just heard, is that they're not getting enough. The person isn't getting enough psychological care. They're not being listened to either long enough by the doctor. They're not being guided through different kinds of development before they are allowed and encouraged to go down these irreparable routes so often. So, Kevin Jones, What kind of advice would you offer a young trans youth?
I mean, first and foremost, you don't want to. The most important thing is to not sever any connection between the child and the parent. So, anytime that sort of conversation comes up for me, it's really important to make sure the parent or guardian is present. And, um, you know, it's not so much me saying what you need to do, or if you do X, Y, or Z, this is that, or if you think this, you must think that. It's really just listening and really trying to understand on where they're coming from and where they're at, so I can best analyze and understand um, where the lack of their self-expression is coming from, so they can have a better way of channeling that lack of expression in a more productive way, instead of hiding who they really are and feeding into their own ego.
That's deep. I appreciate that. Okay. Does before I move on to the next question, does anybody have anything on their mind they would like to spontaneously slip into this conversation they've been sitting on? Okay. We'll come back to this at the end. So if you have any spontaneous light bulbs that have to be shared, we get those shared. So Nicholas, when considering new laws, what should lawmakers consider when it comes to queer and trans issues involving children?
Man, I just want to be blunt and say, like, kids shouldn't be trans. I feel like the law should prevent children from transitioning, period. Like, not medically transitioning at all until they're of legal age. I'm sure there's some wiggle room, like if they have like some sort of health issue they need to go on and they have to take medication that affects their hormones. And I feel like that's fine. But like anything to do with transition related because of gender dysphoria, or thinking because they like gender nonconforming things that they have to trans themselves, is just absolutely bonkers and should not be allowed. Just in Illinois recently, I was speaking against with Awake Illinois, where they were trying to pass this bill in Illinois to make parents that didn't want to transition their kids illegal. And if they passed that bill, they would have fined the parents to even go to jail or pay a huge fine if they didn't want to transition their kids. So these bills are already trying to be passed, and it's insanely horrible that there are representatives trying to push this. It's just such a crazy world, and I would not want anyone to be doing that, because all of us here have had underlying mental health issues that weren't addressed. And if kids don't know themselves, and if they were to do something to their bodies that are permanent, that is something they can never take back. If a little girl got a double mastectomy, they can't ever get their breasts back. So if a 18-year-old like me that tried to transition at 18 can't make a decision, or thought that transition was the best answer even though it wasn't, isn't clear about that, why should a kid be?
Very good point. There's a lot of adults who've transitioned and they are not feeling good about the path they took. And they were of adult age. So how much easier is that for a child? I think I would have identified as trans myself in my earlier years, the way things are, because it would have been such a simple, easy kind of explanation for so many things. So I feel bad for these people who just don't seem to get like a fair shake with the options. Javier, what laws do you think lawmakers need to consider when it comes to gay and trans issues?
Oh, point blank, I think it should just be banned all across the board for anyone under 18, and that there should be a workaround that 18, 18 up, that there should be at least a year, at most 3 years worth of therapy to make sure that this person wants to pump themselves full of hormones, that they want to go with certain surgeries. Because I actually tried to get bottom surgery and breast augmentation after a month, because my nurse who was prescribing my hormones said that I was at a right mental state and at the right hormonal levels to do it. And she got me in touch with a doctor who said that he doesn't need um, any type of therapy paperwork showing that this is going to benefit me mentally, that he wants to schedule a consultation. Well, that was a consultation, but like an in-person consultation, and talk about it more. I genuinely think that we need to make it a requirement to have anywhere from a year to 3 years worth of therapy for anyone 18 or older, to make sure that they're making a sound, informed decision on what they permanently want to do with their body. That way they won't have to go what we've went through. Some of us have gone through stuff where our bodies have just turned against us so bad that we have to live in a somewhat constant state of fear. But then there are others who don't have to do that, where they walked away from taking the hormones and not having any type of medical complications at all. I think that's what should be done. Ban it under 18 and require anywhere from a year to 3 years worth of therapy to make sure that they know what they're doing, that they have a sound decision, that a professional is giving them the facts and the statistics of what will happen if they take that route.
I like that advice. It's like, we let people know what's on a box of Cheerios, what it's made out of. Everything is laid out. Full discretion, there might be some like bio, genetically modified ingredients in there or something. You might not want that, but the biggest decision of your life, and they're withholding important data points. It's terrible. Emma.
Okay. So honestly, everybody has been pretty much spot on with that. As far as legislation goes, I believe anybody under 18 should be required to not do anything until they are 18. And a good example of that is Angelina Jolie's daughter that just went out there, was getting ready to do this stuff, and at the age of like 15 changed her mind. So perfect example of that. I am in a different position because I wasn't here because of gender dysphoria. So I don't quite understand what that means and how that impacts your life. But what I can tell you is, why don't we do something very similar to like when you get married? When you get married, you have to go through some type of counseling for most churches. And when you go through that counseling, you talk to pro and con type of situations. They must sit there and have some X amount of people that they talk about that is a detransitioner and people that are transitioners. They should have at least 2 to 3 years, as Javier was saying, of mental therapy, but not by somebody that is just telling them what they want. They need to be, legitimate, verified, licensed practitioners, psychiatrists and stuff, that are not going to just give you what you want and just try to make a fast buck out of it. And also, I don't have a problem with having you go through at least 1 or 2 years of living as the opposite sex without anything else. I mean, it's tough. And if you can go through that and take the criticism and take the people misgendering you and stuff like that, and it's going to be okay, you might be okay with that. Because I notice a lot of times the people start to get misgendered too much, and therefore they're like, oh, I made a mistake. And, might as well make that mistake before you physically alter your body. Yes, you can get some of it back, but some of it you can't. And so that, I think, is very important that they need to know as well, and not be fed lies that we're hearing through the media.
Right. Absolutely. Better information for people on this path. So many people are saying they're getting very little to no information, or just sometimes lies, or they're just telling them what they want to hear. No pushback. It's insane. Kevin.
Yeah. I think when the brain is done developing, maybe that would be a good time to consider allowing people to remove body parts. Or a little slightly different on this. There's other countries where it's normalized to have different genders dressing up as the opposite gender, right? And there's no medical intervention for those folks. India and Taiwan, very little to no medicalization going on there. It's not as common. It's not as normalized or whatever. Does it happen there? Yes, but not to the level of what we have going on here. Um, you know, would I like to see it be banned till 30? Yeah, absolutely. Because, you know, if you go to any guy that's in the military at age 18 and you go to them at 19 and you go down the row of them and how many of them regret going there, you know, I'm not saying, going to the military is bad, but when we're 18 and making those types of decisions, would they have made it later? Is what I'm saying. So, um, so yeah, I think hormones and surgery should wait till then. Um, if at all possible, we should be limiting it to 1% of who are even giving access to it, or ideally not at all. I'd like to see it all gone. Um, it, it's um, it's all of it's just completely dehumanizing. It's um, and if you ask the question, what does humanizing mean? It does not mean to cut anything off or to inject anything in. So,
Awesome. Yeah, I've thought about that too. It's like they say your brain isn't fully developed till you're 25 years old. And yet, for so many things, we're like, oh, 18's good. 21, he can drink,
right.
Or whatever. And it's like, this isn't like one of those things, it's not a matter of like whether you're like smoking cigarettes or even drinking. This is such another level of depth that has to go into the thought. Okay. So the next question, and we're going to start back with Nicholas, is what kind of challenges, if any, have you had legally or administratively in trying to return to your original identity? Of course, this is going to be for anybody here who had to go through the changing of the name or anything else. If you didn't, don't worry, but anything.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's not a huge amount of money, but I wouldn't recommend changing your name. It's not a fun process. It takes a few months. The first time I did it, and like I've spent $1,000 changing my name. It's not the cheapest thing to do. Yeah, I feel like that was the only like, but also like hormone medication, just a lot of money. Like months and months of paying for that was insane. Um, but that's kind of all I have is if you're really gonna change your name, like Javier said, like you gotta go through years and years of therapy to just make sure like that's the name you're gonna do. Otherwise, you're gonna be like me and have to change it twice.
Yeah. Wow. Yep. Okay. Well, I'm glad that that wasn't too problematic for you in particular. That's good. Javier?
I personally didn't legally change my name, but I was in the process of it. And just getting that process started, it was, time consuming and a bit stressful. I'm thankful that didn't, that I kind of got lazy in the middle of the process uh, to not legally change my name. So I'm kind of glad I don't have to deal with all that. And especially because I just hate that type of bureaucracy. It's a bit irritating. Doing the paperwork kind of reminded me of like going to DMV and standing in line. I was I was the DMV employee and myself at the same time. But like I said, it should be a requirement to have at least a year or 3 years worth of therapy to make sure that someone would want to change the name and do these irreversible surgeries on their body.
Thank you. Emma, have you had any problems in that area?
Not really. Changing my name wasn't that hard. It was expensive, and I can kind of tell you, in the state of Florida now, they won't allow you to change your gender on your driver's license. Doesn't matter if you're an adult or child. So that might be problematic for anybody that goes ahead and changes their name from male to female to female to male. You're not allowed to change the gender assignment. But I know for me, I can kind of tell you a little thing that happened. I actually got my mom to tell me what she would have named me if I was a female, because she, I figured she had a name for each, and she did. So I was able to use that name. So I was still using my given female name that my mom was going to give me anyway. But it cost me $483 to go through the courts. And then when you think everything's done, you finally get that done. Now you got to realize, to get your driver's license, you must update your social security number. So then your social security number, you have to make some type of reservation. It could take several months. I did mine through COVID, believe it or not. Nobody was ever there. So then when I got that, I was able to go get my driver's license. My driver's license was going to be about $48. And then, because of the fact that my name had changed, I needed to get my birth certificate from Connecticut changed at this point in time to have a female name to a female. Luckily, they were able to do that. I had to pay $100 to the state of Connecticut, and I got a birth certificate back with the changed gender, which actually was my original assigned gender, which what it should have been. So it really wasn't that big of a deal. So $483. The Social Security is free, but it's a pain in the butt. The driver's license was $48. The birth certificate was $100, and it took a total of about 6 months to be able to get that done. Something I definitely don't want to do again. And so I'm just glad that I am where I am now, and I know that other people are going to have struggles. But in the state of Florida, at this point in time, you will not be able to change your gender, especially if you're born here in the state of Florida. They will not change your birth certificate either.
Right. Well, thank you for all that insight into the process. Kevin, how about you? Anything?
It was pretty easy. Relatively inexpensive because I never did my birth certificate. Yeah, the only thing that took long was insurance. That was really the only inconvenient thing, because when I started doing like like my hormone appointments, when I started T, I had to keep it as Evelyn, so it was like, it was inconvenient, but whatever. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't too bad.
Okay. Awesome. All right. So this next question is, what strikes you as most ironic regarding how the school board members of various schools are often voting in favor of essentially sexualizing kids or propagandizing them? Like, a lot of times it seems like they are straight, heterosexual individuals, and yet they seem to be fighting harder than anybody to get what is often considered pornography in schools before kids. So what do you think about that, Nicholas?
Well, I feel like these people that are fighting for it have bought into an ideology because they're trying to be compassionate, they're trying to be empathetic, and they're not. I feel like it's also out of fear. I feel like people are afraid to even confront a different way of thinking. Like, I know somebody that lives on an island and she's trying to bring detransitioner voices to share because her island, everybody on her island is so in this ideology of like, if you have a trans kid, you have to go through this specific pipeline, medical pipeline. And anybody that's against it is a bigot. Anybody that goes against it is a bigot. And I just think that is so unfair to trans people, like people that are actually identified as trans because of gender dysphoria, so that they have to go through the medical thing. I think it's just really insane because they're trying to speak for them, even though these people that are trans, they just want to live their day-to-day life. And instead, there are these crazy woke liberal moms that want to transition their kids because they want to be the most popular mom of them all. It's like trans by, what is it called? Like trans by Hausen or something like that, where they're like, they believe their kids is trans, so they're going to transition their kid. It's just really this bizarre thing that is really unhealthy. And I recently spoke at a school board meeting to take down these hearts from a bill, like the billboard that they had at their school. It was an elementary school, and they should not be having this at kids' schools because they don't need to be learning about sexuality. I'm like, why are they putting stuff about my like the sexuality I experienced at a grade school that they don't even need to be thinking about sexuality? It just doesn't make sense.
Exactly. Exactly. I think he had some interesting insight into maybe what's going on with a lot of these people. I mean, I'm sure from the outset it's based, in some form of compassion or care for these other individuals, but to a fault.
Yeah,
Um,
that those feelings are being misconstrued to serve like such an unhealthy gender ideology.
mhm. Yeah. All right. Javier.
Actually, when I first joined Gays Against Groomers, I can't remember who exactly, which member, but someone shared a link to a website where you can go by state and school district to check what's available within the schools. And because I have younger siblings than me who are in two different school districts, I went through that website, and my high school age siblings had I believe it was genderqueer. And so that was like my first like once I found that out, that was like my first time speaking as a gag member at a school board meeting, because I finally understood that so many people just want so much sexualized content in to be available to kids. It's, it's appalling. It's disgusting. I could call it every word to describe how disgusted I am, but it just won't ever actually show. uh I can never alliterate how truly I feel. Like if I could share how I feel, I would totally would. And it's just, I think it is hypocritical that they're using this word that's just so overused, and it's just now has taken such a different meaning than when it did when we got the right to same-sex marriages to be federalized. That inclusivity, it's lost its true meaning, and it truly is hypocritical that some people who want, for whatever deprived reason, want kids that hold sexual content, that they want to see these kids look at sexualized pictures and to learn about sexual acts at such a young age. It's it's appalling, and it truly is hypocritical. And I'm glad that was my first big take when I joined GAG, was to speak out against that at my siblings school board meeting.
Yes. It's crazy how people are equating what's essentially like gay or queer trans ideology to being a child in order for them to grow up right, or to, okay, maybe the kid is going to, find themselves to be gay or whatever. Now they need to be exposed to this. Just it really undermines the dignity of a person by putting such a low bar of content in front of them as though they require it. Okay. So, Emma, what strikes you as ironic regarding school board members and voting in favor of the sexualizing children and propagandizing them?
Well, I think the biggest thing right now is kids don't know how to write cursive, but they know what gender they are. And I think that's a big problem. And yet at the same time, what does that have to do with reading, writing, math, things like that? I see so many other things that could be taught, like how to do your taxes, how to, balance a checkbook, little things like this that mean more to us than this. However, I truly believe that there's something more sinister going on than what I will go ahead and say on here, because I don't know. It's hearsay at this point. But I can tell you one thing. There rarely is a day where I wake up and go to the news and not another teacher is being arrested for lewd and lascivious acts on a child pornography, or something like that. So it's like they're pushing this and then they're going to jail for child porn. I think what they're trying to do is groom and potentially lure the kids to them to do these things. They do, some of them, I truly believe that they are masking it so that way they want to be inclusive. They want to give that person the love and whatever caring that they have, but that's not their job. Their job is to teach. And so I don't know where this is going to end up leading. But I know when the ones that seem to fight back the hardest are the ones that I'm starting to really put up red flags that something might be a little bit deeper into this particular situation. But I think it has zero place inside of our school. And I understand sex ed. We've all went through sex ed, and it is kind of important to learn about your body. But it's another thing when they're pushing, hey, I'm gender fluid, or hey, I'm trans, or hey, I'm this. What does it matter? I mean, you can completely support somebody without needing to push an ideology behind it. And I think that's what needs to be seen going forward.
Excellent. Exactly. Okay. So we made it through.
Could I say something?
Oh, yes.
Sorry, could I say piggyback off of what Emma said? I know for a fact here in California, a school district in San Diego, their math proficiency is below 20%. And their reading is anywhere between 32 and 37%. And what's funny, there's an organization they work with to teach kids about transgenderism, being transgender, agender, and all these other terminologies that are just getting made up on the fly. And why is it teaching this type of ideology more important than teaching our elementary school kids to know that 2 + 2 = 4? Basic writing and reading. Why is it so important for them to know that, but not to grow up to know how to read? There are so many schools in the country that are 2, 3, maybe even 4 reading levels behind on where they're supposed to be at, but yet teaching them this ideology is more important.
Yes, absolutely agree with that. All right. So believe it or not, we're basically at the end of our 2-hour block here. So with the last several minutes, what I want to do is have all of you share your message with the world. So I'm going to give you each a couple minutes. And what is your message to the world? And share your social media, your website, or whatever you're involved in that you'd like people to come and join you on. This is your time to do that. Nicholas, please.
Yes. I want to share the message to people that have never heard this. Healing gender dysphoria is totally possible. I feel like that's not said enough. And if I can do it, so can you. I'm not someone special. I have dealt with internalized homophobia. Dealt with suicidal ideation. I've dealt with so much dark stuff. And I'm at a place where I'm like, I love myself to the point where I can look at the mirror and just be like, you look good today. Just not just with that, but when I feel anxiety, I can give love to myself. And whenever gender dysphoria shows up, well, I've loved myself to the point where gender dysphoria doesn't exist in my body. So if I can do it, so can you. I truly believe that. And I have written a graphic novel called Trans to Detrans, sharing that message through my story so that you can really experience what it's like to have gender dysphoria and work through what that could look like with self-love. And if there are parents listening, I've also written children's book series to teach that feelings are fast, they don't last, so that we can inoculate the wokeism that exists today.
Amazing. So, and you can find those books on Amazon?
Yeah, so if you follow me on Nicholas Blooms on Instagram, there's a link tree in my bio, and it's also on Amazon under, you can look up Trans to Detrans, A Soul Solution on Amazon. You can also look up I Want Prickles 2 on Amazon, and you can buy those books there.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. All right, Javier.
What I want to share is don't just take the word at face value if a child tells you they're a different gender. I do believe that you should investigate on where they heard that term from, because for all you know, whoever's telling them that is trying to, it has some nefarious purpose behind it. That's all I can say. Um, I did do a interview with a woman from Wisconsin. Her name is Stephanie. I can't pronounce her last name. But I do plan on putting the link in my Instagram bio. Javi J.R. Renee Rene. That's also my username on X. I think a lot of people should watch the interview I had with Stephanie, because I do talk about like in detail what happened to me during the whole medical process of hormone replacement therapy. But just know that no one is born in the wrong body, and all of us here at GAG love you as who you were supposed to be, and we're truly sorry for those of you who have gone through such a horrible experience of being indoctrinated into this ideology.
Thank you, Javier. Emma.
Well, my story is basically be you, and you don't need a label to be you. And when we allow labels to be us, we then tend to, lie to ourselves sometimes because we want to fit into something. It's okay not to fit in. It's okay to be a little bit socially awkward. I'm probably one of the most socially awkward people you'll meet. And when you go out with me, you'll understand that very quickly. And but I do love myself, and I love who I am. I don't necessarily love who I look like, but I can guarantee you this: the grass isn't always greener on the other side. And a lot of the times we think that it is because people are glorifying it so well. And we think that when we transition, that we will have less problems or everything's going to be fixed. It's a utopia, and it's not true. The problems are still there. They just change and manifest itself a little bit differently. We're never going to be able to get through life without some type of resistance and some type of pleasure at the same time. That's where it is. And we need to just learn to balance ourselves, balance our thoughts, balance our health, balance our food, and everything that we do. Balance is so important. And I see that a lot of times the people that are transitioning are out of balance. I always say, look at a triangle. You have your social, business, and personal life. And if one is a little bit more consumed than the other, it bends this way. And so, it's sitting on a top. And when that happens, the two that are falling are going to fall apart. Same thing here. So therefore, you don't need to transition to be trans. You don't also have to follow norms. Just be you. And that's something I didn't do. And it's something I was too afraid to stand up for. And now that I can, I'm okay with that. And I would love to see you guys on any of my social media. It's all Emma Lynn Dowd, and EmmaLynnDowd.com is my website, so you can follow what I got going on there too.
Thank you, Emma. Now, did you say Emma L. Dowd?
It's Emma Lynn, LYNNDOWD.
All right, thank you. Gotta make sure we have that right. All right, I'm gonna ask one final question. You thought that was the last one. Well, we got time for one more.
Did you want me to do my thing or?
Oh, Kevin, I'm so sorry, Kevin.
Oh, good.
I'm gonna give you extra time. I keep Okay, please go on. Tell us, what is your message to the world, and where can we find you on social media?
It was when I was in high school. I went to my grandfather's celebration of life, and I learned that he was a lot more extraordinary than what I was already perceiving as. He had a lot of different professions in his life. He was a flautist, a painter, and he went to medical school, became a doctor, and then realized how awful the medical system is, and then became a homeopathic remedy doctor, and you know, saved lives and cured people naturally, and not getting people on Western medicine, and that completely just, that's been my compass since that point in time. And by extension, my mission is to help people being able to feel empowered to the point where they can heal themselves and understand what they need to heal themselves, mentally, physically, or spiritually. And there's endless ways of being able to explore that and be able to find that for yourself, and which is a big reason why I started the support group I did, where I have both detransitioners and parents coming together. It's more of a place to expand on thoughts, feelings, and actions, and so we can understand that there's no perfect thing. We're just doing our best to be a little bit better day by day, and or just trying things in a different way, that hopefully leads us to a more beautiful and joyful and loving life. My Instagram is Mr.Kevin_Jones. If you're interested in, I do one-on-one coaching for men, and then I also have an interest form for that, and then also for the support group. Yeah, that's all I got.
Excellent. Thank you for that. So, I will attempt to put up all your guys' contact information as you've shared it into the description or the bio of the show. So that way, people driving, they can go back and they can click. I'm going to ask one last question, and if we could just keep it to maybe a minute long, I'll give you the sign. And the question is this: what is it going to take to end false converts in that are entering into the transgender arena? What is it going to take to prevent so many false converts? Nicholas.
I feel like I'm on the spot. Let me think about that. I feel like it's hard. Yeah, maybe that'd be better.
Okay, so let's go to Javier and we'll come back.
The best thing I can say is just like the required amount of therapy. That's honestly the best thing I can say right now. Um, it's just have that require a certain set of time and therapy be required to keep these false converts out, because at the end of the day, these are the type of people that are pushing dangerous ideology, while the people who do have a genuine medical condition of gender dysphoria are being ostracized for not pushing it. It's just I honestly I think that's the best way. It's just having a required set of therapy time.
Thank you for that, Javier. All right, let's move over to Emma, followed by Kevin.
Obviously, Javier's right. Mental therapy is something very important, but also truth. And for all of us, we cannot stop telling our truth. And the more that we get out there and brave the criticism that we're going to get, we're going to make an impact. And so, be strong, be true to yourself, be true to who you are and the people around you, and find a way to love yourself. And also therapy. Those are the best things I can tell you.
Excellent. Kevin.
What's a false convert?
Well, what I mean by that is somebody who goes in and down the path of transgenderism only to realize that that wasn't their truth.
Okay. Yeah, I definitely didn't understand that at first. I think the practice of being present and focusing on what you can control, not what you cannot control. Those are two really prominent things that help you move through difficult change in much more graceful manner instead of it being incredibly rocky. And meditation, float tanks, I mean, it's finding support groups. Is this supposed to be a message to those people, or am I getting this right?
Yeah, no, this sounds
Okay.
good. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay, then yeah, that.
Awesome.
Thank you.
All right, Nicholas.
Yeah, I want to piggyback off of Emma because what she's speaking is really great about, continuing to share truth. I know James Lindsley says to love the truth to the point where someone can try to negotiate the truth out of you, to the point where if you love the truth so much, you're sharing the truth so much, no one can shake that out of you because you're just like, I love the truth. The truth is who I am. The truth is what I want to be and share. I think, and it's working. I feel like all of us here today sharing our story is so courageous. And the more people listen to us, the more people are sharing this. So I feel like that's all we can do is we can't convert people that want to convert themselves to think that they're trans. Like it's not going to happen. It's their journey. They'll figure themselves out. But all we can do is show up as ourselves, share our voice, share our story so that our stories can get to them.
Absolutely. And y'all have done such a super job. I feel like I've gotten to know you all so much better and so well, just kind of knowing about that hidden part of your lives. And so thank you for sharing that so openly with us. And that's the end of the show. So if y'all want to just say goodbye, bye. Everybody's waving.
Bye.
Bye. All right. Have a blessed day. I will talk to y'all soon. Thanks.